At first glance, this place looks calm. Orderly streets, solid brick homes. A town that feels planned, intentional. Nothing about it suggests conflict. But this town was not built for its residents. It was built for their employer. Every house, every street, every rule existed for a single purpose: control. Not through force, but through design. For years, thousands of people lived here believing they were part of something progressive, a better way to work, a better way to live. Then the paychecks changed, the rules didn't, and the town revealed what it really was. This is the story of Pullman, America's first company town, and how a carefully designed ideal became a national warning. In the decades following the Civil War, the United States transformed faster than almost any society before it. Railroads expanded across the continent, stitching together distant regions into a single national economy. Factories multiplied, production centralized, labor concentrated. Millions of Americans left farms and small towns for industrial cities that were not prepared to receive them. Housing shortages were severe. Families crowded into tenements built quickly and cheaply. Sanitation systems failed. Disease spread easily. Infant mortality was high. Work was exhausting and dangerous. To industrialists, cities looked unstable, not just physically, but politically. Control was slipping. George Pullman believed this chaos could be solved. Pullman was a self-made industrialist who built his fortune manufacturing luxury railroad sleeping cars. His products symbolized comfort, order, and refinement in an otherwise harsh industrial world. Railroads depended on them. Wealthy travelers expected them. Presidents rode in them. Pullman cars were carefully controlled environments. Movement was regulated. Noise was minimized. Employees were trained to enforce rules discreetly. Travelers behaved differently because the space demanded it. To Pullman, this was proof that environment shaped behavior. He believed the same principle could be applied to workers. Pullman did not see labor unrest as an economic problem alone. He believed it was moral and environmental. In his view, people behaved badly because they lived badly. Change the surroundings, regulate daily life, and behavior would follow. This belief was widely shared among industrial elites of the era. What tellingly separated Pullman from others was his willingness to act on it completely. In the early 1880s, Pullman purchased thousands of acres of land just south of Chicago and announced plans to build an entirely new town. Not a neighborhood, not worker housing near a factory, a town. Every element would be planned, every service would be owned, every rule would be enforced by the company. Pullman wanted workers living inside a system he controlled, not commuting from a city he did not. Architects were instructed to design housing that was attractive but uniform. Brick construction conveyed permanence. Ornamentation was restrained. Individual expression was discouraged. Workers lived in row houses and apartment buildings. Skilled workers received slightly better accommodations. Managers lived in larger homes. Executives lived elsewhere entirely. Class distinction was embedded in the town's physical layout. This was not accidental. The town included schools, churches, a library, parks, and a grand hotel designed to impress visitors and investors. Streets were wide and clean. Sewage systems were modern. Water was reliable. Compared to Chicago's tenements, Pullman looked almost utopian. Visitors came from around the world to see it. Journalists praised it. Reformers admired it. Industrialists studied it as a possible model for managing labor without conflict. Pullman encouraged this attention. But the town also had rules. There were no saloons. Alcohol was banned. Public meetings required approval. Political organizing was discouraged. The local newspaper was controlled by the company. Even leisure was regulated. Acceptable recreation was defined by management. Unacceptable behavior was quietly punished. There was no need for heavy policing. Control was ambient. Pullman insisted this was benevolence. He argued that clean streets and moral order improved character, that stability justified oversight, that workers were better off under this system than in the chaos of the city. At first, many workers agreed. Life in Pullman felt safer and more stable. Homes were cleaner. Streets were orderly. Families felt protected from the disorder beyond the town's boundaries. But the stability was conditional. Workers did not own their homes. Rent was deducted directly from wages. Utilities were company-owned. Stores were company-controlled. There was no independent local government. no elected officials, no neutral authority to appeal to. If a worker lost his job, eviction followed quickly. Employment and shelter were inseparable. This was not a theoretical risk, it was policy. This arrangement shaped behavior in subtle but powerful ways. Workers learned to avoid complaints, to avoid attention, to avoid organizing. Neighbors became cautious around one another. Conversations were measured. Dissent was quiet. The town required little overt enforcement. The threat of unemployment and homelessness was enough. For years, the system appeared stable. Then the economy collapsed. In 1893, the United States entered one of the worst economic depressions in its history. Railroads failed, freight traffic declined. Orders for new Pullman cars collapsed almost overnight. The Pullman Company responded by cutting wages. Some workers lost nearly 30% of their income. Rents did not change. Pullman refused to lower housing costs, arguing that maintenance expenses remained fixed and that investors expected returns. To Pullman, this was rational. To workers, it felt cruel. Families fell behind on rent. Debt accumulated. Evictions increased. Workers who had once believed in the promise of Pullman now felt trapped inside it. The same system that had offered stability now enforced dependence. The town designed to prevent unrest was creating it. In May 1894, Pullman workers went on strike. They demanded wage restoration or rent reductions. Pullman refused to negotiate. He believed authority must not bend to pressure. His refusal transformed a local dispute into something far larger. The American Railway Union, led by Eugene V. Debs, supported the workers by refusing to handle trains carrying Pullman cars. Rail traffic slowed across the country, then stopped. Mail delivery was disrupted. Commerce stalled. Entire regions were affected. What began as a local labor dispute became a national crisis. The federal government intervened. President Grover Cleveland ordered federal troops to Chicago, citing interference with mail delivery and interstate commerce. The arrival of soldiers escalated tensions. Riots broke out. Rail yards burned. Workers clashed with troops. More than 30 people were killed. Debs was arrested. The strike collapsed. In the immediate sense, Pullman won. Production resumed. Workers returned under worse conditions than before, but the victory was hollow. A federal commission investigated the Pullman Company. Its findings were devastating. The commission condemned Pullman's refusal to negotiate, criticized the company's control over housing, and declared the company-town system incompatible with American democratic values. Public opinion shifted sharply. Pullman, once praised as a visionary, became a warning. George Pullman died in 1897. Public anger was so intense that his family feared his grave would be desecrated. His coffin was encased in concrete and buried under massive weight. In 1898, the Illinois Supreme Court ordered the Pullman Company to sell its residential properties. Corporate ownership of daily life was ruled unacceptable. Pullman ceased to be a company town. The factory continued for a time, but the world had changed. Rail technology evolved, manufacturing consolidated. Jobs disappeared slowly rather than suddenly. Eventually, the factory closed. The town was absorbed into Chicago. Today, Pullman appears peaceful. Its buildings remain, its streets remain, its order remains, but its meaning has changed. Pullman was not just a place, it was a philosophy, the belief that control could be disguised as care, that design could replace consent, that efficiency justified authority. It was the belief that industry could manage human life better than democracy. That belief failed. The Pullman strike reshaped American labor history. It strengthened unions, exposed corporate overreach, and forced the nation to confront the human cost of industrial power. Labor Day became a federal holiday shortly afterward, a symbolic recognition that workers mattered. Pullman's legacy still echoes today, in employer-controlled housing, in company-managed benefits, in modern debates about corporate power and worker dependence. The questions Pullman raised have never disappeared. Where workers once lived under corporate rules, families now live ordinary lives. Where wages once dictated shelter, homes are privately owned. Where a carefully engineered town once tried to manage human behavior, a community endures, imperfect, autonomous, alive. Pullman was built to solve a problem. Instead, it revealed one. This is what remains when industry tries to replace community and loses.